our next topic is a good one because it's respecting players' time.
That's important, yeah.
Yeah. Shadowlands had a major philosophical shift of what if there were a really good thing to chase. And it's kind of funny because a lot of their philosophies seem to be followed rather blindly. Because the thing is, that's a good philosophy. You just have to apply it right. Yeah. And I would really hope that they understand that the issue is not necessarily that philosophy. Rather, the issue is more their execution, right? Because it's the sort of thing, it's very commonly said about in games, ideas are cheap, execution is hard and expensive. So, the bit that they failed on, like domination shards are not a bad thing as an idea, but the implementation, the execution has to be good, and that's the problem. It wasn't good. So they kept on, I suppose, writing checks that in terms of honestly, okay, I need a better word for this, because you would say they were writing checks that they couldn't cash in terms of like game design aptitude, but it's more the output of that. So the game design aptitude could be there, but under the circumstances of development and the timelines of development and other factors in the game, they weren't able to apply it right. Yeah. That's basically my point. This is good. Having a really cool thing to chase is good as a core part of an MMO, many would say, and it still obviously is something that is here now. I just say that the problem with Korthia sockets is that they were pretty poorly designed, not that they were going in the wrong philosophical direction. Yeah. I mean, we could have a discussion about whether that's the right or wrong direction. I'd say some of that sometimes is just fine and fun, but it needs to be executed right, and execution's the issue. But perhaps it's the case that they're realizing they should maybe take lower risk bets philosophically and actually be able to execute them to a level of quality that will delight players.
Yeah, it's
rather than, do these risks like, these domination shards could be an incredible feature that people will really want to chase for to max out their character, but the chances of succeeding in that design are low.
Yeah, there's a weird thing where I think they're very defensive a lot of the time, but there's other times they seem to have, and I don't know what mechanics of like team or whatever conversation they would do this, but there's clearly a couple of ideas where they're blind to the drawbacks and possible downsides of their plans. They go, hey, this is a good idea if it works. And for whatever reason, no one with a loud enough voice can go, be careful when you do that, because if that goes wrong, it will do this. Maybe someone says that and then they say, no, it's fine, we'll balance it just fine. And that's a thing where if domination shards were, if they were cool and fun to play with and they weren't that strong, maybe it would have worked perfectly fine. Yeah. But the problem is they were framed as, this is your power source, and they were very, very, very powerful. And also acquisition was RNG. Obviously it had a backup, but the backup was slow. And you go, that is a very dangerous cocktail to put together, because if you have like a couple of these variables off, it spirals completely out of control into what happened with domination shards. And you go, oof. Maybe, like you said, maybe don't do that in future. Maybe go, is it worth this? But I think that requires a more playing it safe approach overall. Like you're saying.
Yeah, it's just about what kind of bets you take. So I think it'll probably end up somewhere good. But he said that
I've got it. It's gear. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Put that effort into dragon riding. Oh, look at that. You've got an expansion feature. It's great.
It worked.
Obviously, those would be different resources, but you know the point.
He says, as a result, they're basically trying to be more cognizant of what they're actually asking players to do with their time. Yup. So the Dragonflight Catalyst no longer requires flux, and now auto-generated account-wide charges are there instead of, character-specific ones. Better. Also, they're toying with the idea of having a catch-up mechanic for the Great Vault that would allow players who miss a week of loot multiple times, or allowing players who miss a week to loot it multiple times, or making it easier for players with multiple alts to fill out their vaults every week. Maybe the idea that if you fill out a vault slot, you maybe have a boost in your alts or something like that.
That is fucking brilliant. Please
do that.
I know it's going to come across, you just want easier loot or whatever, but the idea of literally going, I can't log into World of Warcraft this week. I'm behind on loot. There's some of that's fine, right? And I think missing the drop chance from the boss is enough. You don't want to double down on punishments.
Yeah.
That's the last thing you want to double down on punishments. And that's what happens when you increase loot stuff. You increase the chance for missing out. And it's like you look at any other live service game or almost any other live service game that goes for the same kind of get the gear loop, get the improvement. And they all have like fail safes. They all have like, was it Lost Arks kind of, oh yeah, you didn't do your dailies, whatever. Just like just do your stuff once every 3 days. I was like, yeah, well now obviously, this would be, you could still, play once a week and be okay with the Great Vault. But it's not about the reality of it. It's not about how often you play. It's about when your schedule breaks and the psychological experience of, I'm now behind. Shit, I don't feel good. Whereas, it's kind of a thing of like, oh, you were busy that week and you say you miss a chance to hang out with a friend. Like, there's a difference between that friend going, well, fuck yeah, I don't want to hang out with you anyway, you bastard. That's what Great Vault does. What the Great Vault should do is, sorry, dude, no worries. I'll just see you next week instead. That's the experience. That's what you want. That's what you want to feel. You want the game to go, sorry you're busy. You didn't get to have fun with this. But it's fine. We'll be here next week. And we'll catch you up on what you missed. And people go, but that's unfair to people who play every week. Fuck it, so be it. Let everyone get gear and have fun.
I suppose this is maybe a 10.1 feature? Doesn't seem like it's coming there for launch.
It's either going to be a super late edition or
10.0.5.
Could be a 10.0.5.
If they do that. Yeah. Well, you know what? In principle, good. Now, the next thing's a bit weird. So Season 1 will not have Uncapped Valor, but they're open to tweaking the initial week-to-week numbers.
It's that awful balance,
Makes
right?
Sense, but yeah.
Awful balance. Do we want people to know life and ruin themselves? Do we want the gap between people who can know life and people who don't to be big? I would say it's fine. I'd say it's fine on cap, but depends on how the data from Season 4 went. Because obviously there's so many problems with Uncapped because you create this like vast schism in your player base, and that's the awkward part. Where I was all talking about like, hey, you miss something and you feel bad, but the game catches you up next week. That's what Capped Valor is for. But it doesn't feel it that way. It feels it's supposed to hold everyone else back just so they don't get too far ahead. And that feels bad to a lot of people, except the people who are held back. It's kind of the thing where I think it's all about like the framing to the player behavior of it, where it's like, oh, you don't get to play, we'll reward you a little bit, but you also need to reward people who play like shit, play like crazy, play like shit. Don't reward people who play like shit. Don't do that. Reward people who play like crazy. So that's I think that's actually an interesting thought. Now that I think about it, the Great Vault should be very comforting and caring and welcoming to people who miss a week. But Valor should maybe be uncapped so people can go like crazy and play if they want to. Because if you kind of get it, get like one's positive and one's negative, missing the Great Vault's negative, and capping Valor's negative, and like on the player behavior, unexpected behavior skill. I'm really trying to think this through because I think this could be like pretty poignant for how to like philosophically frame player behavior and how people feel about playing the game. Basically, try to uncap Valor, see how it goes. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, at least maybe 3 weeks in, double the cap.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, be aggressive with it and see what happens. Because I'm assuming by them capping Valor, it means they saw a gulf in Season 4, but I don't know.
Ah, yes, right. They want raiding to be advantaged because competitiveness in raiding is very front-loaded, whereas other pillars like Mythic Plus and PvP is backloaded as players push higher levels in raiding over the course of the season. To talk a little bit about talents, the number of talent loadouts per character had to be a limited thing from a technical perspective. They landed in 10 because it felt that was basically fine for the vast majority of players, but they also do know that like there's ways to have more than 10, like add-ons and shit. People really need that. But the one that I wanted to get on that's most important is patch cadence. Mm-hmm. Because we want to build up, 3 points makes a trend line, right? So every time Blizzard mentions this, It's important, right? So patch cadence. They recognize that the patch cadence in Shadowlands left a lot to be desired, and so have lots of plans to help address that in Dragonflight. The expansion has the opportunity to further refine core class concepts and capabilities without borrowed power getting in the way. So the idea there is that if Shadowlands had a lot to be desired and they have lots of plans to help address that, that should mean, that is, I should say, in line with what Ian said previously, which was a perhaps faster cadence of smaller patches instead of just having, 2 giga patches and that's it. So I think something like that could be a lot more healthy. It could allow them to be a lot more responsive. And also we can maybe expect to see core classes be refined. Shadow Priest. And a few others.
Paladin. All of Paladin, please.
Yeah.